Good morning everyone, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. So today we're going to be focusing on something that it seems mainstream media don't care about it, but you know, it's kind of important to me, and it's probably important to you guys as well, because it's involving our food supply, the cost of living, and you know, some things that I didn't even know were actually a thing. But guys, just if you've not done so already, please hit the buttons down below, the subscribe buttons and the like, and of course, you know, you can share my stuff to all your socials if you feel, you know, it's helping anyone. But we're going to talk about the food banks and the food bank crisis that we could be in 6 weeks. Now, I'm going to be going predominantly from one article today, guys, and I will put this in the description. But basically, the article is titled, How England Came to Rely on a Sticking Plaster Crisis Fund. So last year, I'm picking out certain paragraphs, guys, so I don't have to read the whole article. So last year, Hereford Food Bank received £84,000 from the Household Support Fund grant from Herefordshire County Council. It helped to give 2,300 food parcels to nearly 5,000 people, including 1,700 children. Over the past 12 months, equivalent to more than 100,000 meals. So what you've got here is this article. It's saying, before this it says that less people are donating to these food banks and more people are starting to need them, are starting to register for them and are wanting to extract food. So this is what you see, and I've done a few videos on the cost of living and the price of everything going up at an alarming rate. So it only, you know, it makes absolute sense, and there's nothing in here that I feel is controversial. As the prices of everything go up, less people can afford to buy food, more people are reliant on food banks, and less people are donating to said food banks because they can't afford it. The fund accounted for about a quarter of its total income as a charity, allowing it to respond respond to rapidly growing demand for its charity food. Without the Household Security Fund, we'd have been operating at a loss, Parker says. So they're saying there that without this fund that the government give the you know, councils, this, what's it called, Household Security Fund, I think I call it that. Yeah, no, Household Support Fund. Without this fund that's given by the government, you know, these food banks would have to close. They wouldn't be able to, you know, they wouldn't have any food to give out because, like I said, the donations are down. People are not giving as much food. So the government now, this scheme is due to end in 6 weeks on the 30th of September, and the government have not announced whether this scheme is going to be extended, expanded, retracted or whatever. But guys, let's look at our government, and you know, they're at the moment they're really good at cancelling things and cancelling, you know, and putting taxes up, cancelling old people's winter fuel allowance. So I would suspect that this would be an easy win to cancel this payment. The Household Security Fund was introduced by the Conservative government in 2021 as a stop to backbench rebels worried that cutting the £20 a week COVID uplift to universal credit would cause poverty to rocket. Worth 842 million in England last year, it has became a pop-up annual workaround for the cracking social security system. So what they're saying there is this social, what do they call it? Social HSF. This was introduced in response to the £20 a week uplift that people got who were claiming benefits. And let's not forget, during this time as well, there was a lot of people laid off work. There was a lot of this furlough. It was absolutely wild, you know. And people who were claiming certain benefits, as I understand it, were given an extra £20 a week. Now, there's an argument, a strong argument, to say that your weekly or your monthly food shop has gone up more than £20 a week just with inflation by, you know, from 2021. So the arguments here are pretty solid. You know, if food prices have gone up more than £20 and we're taking away £20, that means they're not just £20 a week down or whatever it is, they're less than that because the food prices have gone up higher than inflation. And you guys, people really don't have enough money now to buy food. In an era where of food banks, warm rooms, starving children, holiday hunger, bed poverty, and heat or eat dilemmas, councils have used it to fund holiday food vouchers and activity schemes for children on free school meals and help households with food, fuel and other basic costs, either directly or through local charity services. So all these things here, guys, when these things erupt and, food banks, warm rooms, starving children, holiday hunger, bed poverty, heat or eat dilemmas, when all these things erupt, and it looks like they could be erupting in 6 weeks on the 30th of September, when these things happen, like I've said in my previous videos, when people have got nothing left to lose, that's when you get mass civil unrest. Now, who do you think they're going to aim this anger at? Guys, it's already happened. It's already happening. You've got migrant hotels. Let's look. Migrant hotels who are getting free food, free heating. They don't have their children with them, or if their children are with them, they're in those hotels and they're not hungry. Holiday hunger. Nobody's going to go hungry in these hotels. Bed poverty. Well, they've got a bed, they've got a hotel room. Heat or eat dilemmas. Nobody in a hotel is going to be sat there thinking, right, do I eat or do I put my heating on? Because all this stuff's provided. So we're going to get a situation where people are going to be looking at these hotels and thinking, right, okay, these guys are not hungry. These guys are not, not having to choose between to put their heating on. These guys are not having to have all these problems that I've got, me, as somebody who's paid tax all their life, and I'm paying for this. So why should people of this country pay for, guys, and this is a question, this is an open question, I'm not casting judgment at all. Why should people in this country pay for other people to have stuff that they don't have themselves? And that's what this article to me is saying. In an era we do have food banks, we do have warm rooms. There's a lot of old people who have to choose now whether they're going to buy food or put their heating on in the winter. And that's reality. So let me go down a bit, guys. So this fund is due to run out on the 30th of September, giving the Labour government very little time to decide whether it will relax its famously rigid budgetary discipline and keep it going. If it does not, campaigners say that it risks a school holiday hunger crisis and another winter of misery for England's poorest families. So the government now, and again, I'm surprised this article's not all over the the mainstream media and all over the front pages, because it should be. Let's think about so that's the article, what they're saying. They're talking there about the food banks. They're talking about they're just talking about basically poverty, which is driven by inflation and cuts to social funding. By social funding, I mean this HSF fund. I mean the cut in the extra £20 a week, that people used to get during the COVID times. That's what this article is talking about. Let's look at the other factors. Let's look at, in the United Kingdom, we don't produce enough food already, so we have to import food. And when you import food, it's always more expensive. When you have a situation like we have now in the United Kingdom, where we've not been able to plant any crops of any, our planting season this year has been, I think it's been one of the worst on since records began, because we've had such a wet time at the beginning of the year. It was so wet, farmers couldn't go out and plant any crops. So that's obviously going to have a knock-on effect. That's going to be less food from next year. The war in Ukraine. Now, the war in Ukraine has caused a lot of things, but Ukraine used to supply a lot of food to Europe. That's kind of, it's not at a standstill, it's not stopped, but it's really reduced. So the Europeans are having to get food from elsewhere. So if they're trying to get food from elsewhere, that means the market, the pot of food that everybody's trying to import or export from, whichever way you look at it, you know, that's getting smaller and smaller, or the prices are going up as people, you know, as supply doesn't meet demand, the prices go up. The war in Ukraine did have a huge impact on energy. By energy, I mean natural gas. Natural gas mainly going into Europe, but obviously, if no natural gas is going into Europe, the same thing applies: supply and demand. You know, the Germans have been hit the hardest, I think, with the energy crisis, because their cheap supply of natural gas from Russia, it's gone, it's finished. You know, I'd say heavy manufacturing now in Germany it's just over. And all these things, you know, everything we talk about all stems from energy. Because your energy dictates your transport, it dictates your storage, your warehousing, your heating, everything comes from energy. So if we had a cheap energy supply, a cheap, reliable energy supply, if I had a MacGuffin, if I had a MacGuffin here that could produce me, X amount of kilowatts, and it was guaranteed, and it was free, and it was clean, all wars would end, all hunger would end, you know, we'd be living on different planets in the solar system, and everything would be cool. But the reality is, it's not, we don't have that. So we have to dig for stuff, and we have to get oil out of the ground. So there is, there is a crisis with fuel at the moment. I don't know how the prices of crude oil are being kept so low at the moment. I really don't. I think in a few years it'll come out why, and we'll understand that somebody was suppressing or manipulating the value. But anyway, you know, there is a supply shortage with gas, with crude oil, with hydrocarbons. Yes, we're trying to, you know, ramp up our solar and our wind farms, but the reality is they're not as reliable, and that's not going to help us right now. It's really not. Nuclear is the key. Nuclear is the future. You know, we've had the technology for like 50 years or something. We just don't build them for some reason. We don't like them. There's too many protesters saying we shouldn't have nuclear power plants. But guys, you know, we need those nuclear power plants. Anyway, guys, I'm talking about energy when I should be talking about food. That's the reality of the situation we are in today. The United Kingdom has 6 weeks to decide whether to fund these food banks, keep paying into these food banks. You know, as they're becoming more and more popular, people are depending on them more, less people are donating to said food banks because of the cost of living, you know, and this is the reality of the situation. We're going to get to a point in 6 weeks where people are going to have their food banks stopped. They're going to get a lot of money cut from their budgets, in the context of, you know, a lot of social funding could be stopped in 6 weeks, and then they're going to be looking at these hotels with migrants in them, you know, that are not hungry, that are lazing about, that are not doing anything, and the old people, you know, they're going to be sat there, the nanas, the granddads who've paid tax all their lives, who are really struggling now. They're going to be thinking, my tax money is funding these people, but my grandkids can't eat. And that's going to be the situation, guys. It really is. Now, how we navigate through that as a people, as a country, you know, I really don't know. But, you know, I'm obviously not having any opinions on this because people are getting sent to prison for saying mad stuff. Anyway, guys, that's my little morning video. I'm going to mag to grid, and I'll see you guys soon.